It is July 2024 and I get to play a show. Some friends of mine have a 90s alt-rock cover band and one of their guitar players was going to be at the Olympics, so they asked me if I could fill in for them. And I, of course, said yes, because I don't get to play out often, maybe once a year. So, yeah, I was jumping at the chance. So they dropped the set list on me, and it was like, oh, that's a lot of songs. But quickly, I realized that I knew all the songs. It's pretty much the soundtrack to my college years. And so all I had to do was get the songs out of my air guitar brain and into actual guitar hands. But songs aside, what I was really excited about was putting together a rig for this. So I started brainstorming, and there was a lot of colors, and I was kind of filling the color role as, this is a 3-guitar band. So the other 2 guitar players were more straight ahead tones. I mean, there was some delays and stuff, but typically the guy I was filling in for, he covered the extra phasers and flangers and wahs, whammies, and I love also bringing like a Leslie thing, especially if there's no keyboard player in the band. So I'm going to walk you through how I pulled this rig together and what I chose and where I ended up with it. The Soldano Astro 20. Now, there's actually many reasons I picked this. The first one was that I love this amp, so I guess that's the easiest one. It's 20 watts, so it can get loud. It was pretty loud for everything, and it still has a little more juice left in it. So 3-guitar band, they're using loud 212s, and I was using a 112. I ended up with my Friedman 112 open back cab it's the Dirty Shirley cab that I've used for a lot. You've seen it on the channel, I'm sure, if you've watched before. It's as big as a 212 cab, it just has one Lynchback speaker in there. Probably could have used 2 speakers just for the dispersion, because sometimes I'd veer to the left or right and then I wouldn't be able to hear myself as clearly. So that would be nice to just get a wider dispersion, but it was plenty loud. Back to the Astro 20. 20 watts, lots of channels. Yes, so it's got, from the faceplate, it looks like it's 3 channels. You have the clean channel, which is just right here, which is a really nice clean channel. And then gain 1 and gain 2. So it looks like 3 channels, but it's not, because you have all of this pretty high-tech stuff happening inside it. The channel 1 and 2 are assignable. So the way I have it assigned is you have green, which is always your clean, and then you have 3 different modes. Blue is a low gain drive, purple is a higher gain, and then red is very similar to the SLO, like we are driving and punching here. Tons of different songs to cover, tons of different colors to pull out. So I wanted to be able to give these different shades, but I also wanted to be cohesive, not just like 2 different amps that are just wildly different. So I didn't have 3 channels to choose from. I had 7, which is bonkers. 7 channels here. So I set channel 1 up as a lower gain. You see the gain knob is back behind 12 o'clock, and then channel 2 is past 12 o'clock. So that's the higher gain version of that. So I've got green, I have a lower gain blue, higher gain blue, lower gain purple, higher gain purple, and lower gain red and higher gain red to choose from. Lots of colors to choose from. And the channels still take pedals, so I still could just go to the green channel and pop on a pedal, which I did. I brought in a rat style pedal. That's a different story, we'll talk about that in a bit, but it takes pedals great. So that was all fantastic. Now, how do you switch 7 channels and all of these modes? Well, that is because there is MIDI. Fantastic. So I've got MIDI switching, so I could just instantly jump over. This is great because this is another really big component to choosing this. I've been at shows where the mic, my cab's mic'd, and then someone kicked the mic and the mic's now over here. Or, you know, I know from the studio, you work to get the perfect balance of the mid-range on that mic that you just can't do live. So this direct out comes after all of the effects. It's after the effects loop. And then you choose which IR will be assigned to it. So inside this, you get all of your amp, comes out direct with the IR, with all of your effects. And it's just simple. Here's the XLR. Boom. There you go, sound man. That's great. Now I was able to pick like a super fat IR that sounded really balanced with my sounds. I know that's the sound that's going to come out through any of the PA or additional speakers, and that's going to feed into the singer's in-ears and things like that. So the Astro 20 was the core of the sounds. Let me run you through a great. So the way the head is set up is pretty clever. The channel volumes, the individual volume 1, volume 2, that is the volume that's going to be going out of the XLR. So I have this XLR plugged as it was going to the front of house, going into my DAW. The master is plugged into the cabinet. So I don't have a mic on the cabinet, but I could just turn this up. Oh boy, that came in hot. So that was my individual sort of monitor control. I could kind of sneak that up if I need to without changing anything going to the front of house. And then I used the same IR for all settings. And that's something I like. If I'm gonna play live with IRs, I want it to be like I have one cab. I don't want to have a separate IR for every sound. I mean, you can do that, but I prefer that one consistent sound. In the studio, I love having multiple IRs to switch around for different sounds and things like that. But I just went with one nice IR, and they all assigned that. They show you here on this little the Galaxies kind of guy here. So I picked an IR that sounded closest to my cab because I didn't want there to be a crazy discrepancy of like I'm hearing something really dark, but I'm sending something really bright out to the sound guy. So that's important to try and balance that out. And it sounds great. When you go to, I'm just going to show you from the front panel and not the foot switch for right now. Channel green is channel 1 blue is the lowest gain sound we've got here. If I wanted a higher gain sound of that, I just go to channel 2, which has the higher gain setting. Man, I love the blue channel in the Soldanos. It's very reminiscent of the SLO 100's crunch mode. If you don't know the SLO 100, the big mama flagship of the Soldano line, the legendary flagship, it has a clean sound and the distorted sound, the lead sound. But the clean sound has two modes. It has clean and crunch. They're essentially, I believe, the same thing, just sort of a lower or higher gain version of that same channel. But the crunch version is mwah, and I think super underrated. And it shares some DNA between the Astro's blue and that SLO crunch. I love it because it could go from a really clear cleanish tone to like a pretty awesome crunch. Purple kicks it up from there, so I was looking at that as it actually has a leaner, tighter bottom end, a little more presence up top, and a little more gain. So similar color overall, but it almost has a different EQ structure of what's distorting. So I felt that maybe that's a little less like a vintage tone. The purple goes a little more modern. That's killer rock tone, and of course you could get more gain by going to the other channel that I've assigned for higher gain. And right now it might sound a little bassy too. I always assume that a sound guy's gonna like just neuter all the sound coming off of the bottom end of guitars. So I wasn't really worried about that. But when we were rehearsing versus here versus live, the bottom end is different. Like when I'm here by myself, I want a lot of bottom end. And so this is cool because there's a depth switch. You could cut the bottom or add more bottom. I just left it in the middle for the show and for right now. But it can be pretty dramatic, and but you know, you're sitting by yourself. It's nice to fill out those bottom frequencies. The red channel I reserved for the big wall of sound and the high energy Rage Against the Machine kind of stuff. And to get maximum gain on any kind of solo tidbits. We just covered so much ground, and I like all the sounds that it puts out, so, you know, it's a sweet, sweet girl. This is the MIDI setup I did for the Astro 20. It was really simple. I just set it up as a logical thing. Every preset, we'll call these programs or presets on the Astro, are using the same IR. So program 0 is green, and it just gets hotter from there. Program 1 is the lowest gain blue. Then I go to channel 2, a higher gain blue, low gain purple, high gain purple, low gain red, highest gain red. And then if you wanted to, there's 128 slots, and you could do all combinations of IRs and things like that. But for my purposes, I was just treating the Astro like a 6-channel amp. That's all I needed. I mean, all I needed was 7 channels. That's it. I mean, that's quite luxurious and pretty mega that an amp this size is 7 channels. The Pedalboard. You know, I thought about taking just like a tiny, tiny little board because the stage is very small and it's going to be crowded. I think there's 2 singers, there's 3 guitar players, there's a lot going on. Yeah, it just didn't work out because there was tones I wanted to hit. So here at the studio, I have a big Friedman board. It's huge. It has 2 power supplies in there, and I can put anything I want on it. And things are in constant rotation. I mean, Dave Friedman built my original studio pedal board, which is just the coolest, sickest thing ever. And then when I got to my other studio, it was too big, so I scaled it down. I still had a really effective pedal board. And then when I got to this studio, it's gone through so many permutations. I've had like next to nothing, again, this huge one and stuff. And that huge one is just way too big to be portable. So I thought like, well, let's see what I can do here. Do you know this website, Pedalboard Playground? It's super great. You type in what size pedal board you have, or if they have your pedal board there, it shows up. You type in the pedals you want, and they have a lot of pedals in there. So you could lay them out. I've gone through so many versions of this, especially as I was finding tones and stuff, seeing how I could fit everything in, because I didn't really have the pedal board itself that I needed. So I started with, I wanted to go back into the Friedman lineup, and I'll tell you why in a second. It was important to me. But when I was measuring, something to keep in mind, like I went to the edges. But, you know, once you add, even on a low profile cable, once you add that in to either side, you put two mini pedals next to each other, they're not really that close to each other anymore. And then you also have to keep in mind the edges of the pedal board. Some boards have like a little lip and stuff like that. So you could lose up to like a half an inch easily, maybe an inch if you add it all up. So I'm going with the Friedman 1520. It's I would say it's a medium small pedal board. It's not a small pedal board because the smallest board is much smaller this way. The Friedman boards give you extra space here before it goes up to this lip. And you might say like, I don't need this lip. You might need the lip now that you know how much space it gives you behind it to tuck things away. This is why I went with the Friedman pedal board, because I've already been using these extra pedal board add-ons. I mean, I've had these for a long time and they work great. They're dead quiet. You know, Dave builds the pedal boards to the stars, so he knows what he's doing clearly. And, you know, look, this is the pedal power. This is the pedal grid 10. It has 10 slots for power, that is. Each has 350 milliamps output, 9 volts, all right? Which is cool because some power supplies have like a bunch of 100s and then maybe 2 500s. This just gives you a lot of power. There are still things that are gonna be problematic that you gotta think ahead, like Eventide boxes and certain Strymon things need to have other power requirements, but we'll get to that. And this is gonna cover everything. This will go under the board and screw in. It's a system, they're all complementary. And then you could get to your power in there. Everything else will come out the bottom. And it's gonna stay, I was gonna say super clean, but my pedal board wiring is not as super clean as it maybe should be. So now the other reason for using the Friedman board for me is this guy, the buffer bay. This was one of those products, I remember when it came out, I was like, okay, I don't know, sure, I guess. But here's what makes it so great, especially for the kind of board I'm gonna do. One, it has a buffer. So buffer's good. There's a whole bunch of videos and stuff that talk about how important the buffers are. You could also turn the buffer off if you're hitting a different buffer that you prefer. But this guy slots in on the side here, which is great. So instead of plugging your guitar cable into the first pedal up here, this is in the side, you plug the guitar in here. And now it's also a patch bay. So guitar in here, and then that same signal comes out the other side, and you could run cables underneath again, which is super great. Also, that's the front end stuff. I have some effects that I'm gonna be running into the effects loop, and that could get so messy. Again, look at this, you just run the through, pick your throughs you want to go here, and then from the effects loop, I'll just go in and out. That'll hit those effects, while my guitar in and out to the front of the amp could go here too. So it's like that 4-cable method kind of thing, very clean, and then it allows you to route everything nicely under the pedal board rather than having just like, I don't know, cables everywhere and you have to make extra space. I've tried that before, it's a nightmare. This cleans everything up, it's great. And then, you know, you got the buffer and it sounds great. See, I got them screwed in there. So that is the power, and that is the buffer bay, and it's all tight. See, there's little screws there. Super cool. Now, I'm not sure about if I'm going to use this platform. I do have an expression pedal, but I'm not sure. So let's talk guitar. When I got the call, my buddy Matt said, hey, I think maybe like I'm going to be using a Les Paul. The other guy has a Strat, so maybe you can bring a Telly? As luck would have it, I had just bought this. I saw it at Angel City Guitars. Actually, I had been stocking it on Reverb for months. I mean, it's a little out of my wheelhouse. We've got this single coil here. We have a wide range humbucker here. But man, when I played this the first time, I was just pulling tones out of that. Just was like, this is really modern. It's super indie rock. And my other guitars weren't doing that. I mean, by design. And I just really had a fun time with this. It has this badass attitude. So I had just bought this. Like, I do have the Telecaster that I'm going to bring. This bridge Tele pickup is pretty beefy. It's like I think it's called their J Street. These are Lawlers. And it's like a almost P90-ish sort of sound. But it can be pretty bright. When these two are together, that's this thing that's bonkers, where you got this bright bridge pickup and this fat neck pickup together. You get the best of both worlds, and it's this really rich 3D kind of tone. And then the neck pickup alone is awesome too. It's big, huge. I'd really love it. Neck feels great, like all the Shabbats. I mean, and this thing stays in tune like nobody's business. I can tune it like once a week. It's really amazing. I didn't have to tune it at all when we were playing. Just like, yeah, this is great. I can hit it as hard as I want, and it's just comes back. It knows what's up. So this is a Shabbat guitar. The Lion, I don't remember what they call this particular configuration, but Lion is this Tele shape. This is my black Lion. Love this. So I needed something to control the Astro 20 and pedals and switch patches on for echoes and effects and stuff like that. And I found something which is obvious. Everyone's gonna go like, yeah, it's been around a while. Why didn't you get one sooner? The RJM Mastermind PBC/6X. This is the thing that fulfills my childhood dreams of the Bradshaw pedalboard with 50 buttons on there, and you hit one and you're like, oh, that's the lead with all the delays and all the stuff, and then you go gunk and you hit the next one and it goes whoo to a compressed clean sound. That's just like, oh, makes me so happy. RJM Mastermind PBC6X controls everything. So if something's going to be turned on or off, it's going to happen through the Mastermind. To set this up, you plug the Mastermind USB into your PC. They have a very logical, I mean, it's a great design for their editor software. It's nothing fancy looking, but everything you could possibly imagine is in there. And it's really straightforward, easy to use. They have some tutorials online. I watched a few tutorials and I dove right in. Now, I don't know how to do everything on it yet, but I was off to the races very quickly. This is the Mastermind editor, and the way I did it, I know there's another way to do it. I just made all my presets in order. There's 4 function switches I was using, so I just kept it 4 switches per song. And if I didn't use them, I just left those 2 blank and then went on to the next song. Before you can start making presets, you have to assign which devices you have. So I have an H90, and this is all stuff they had. They had so many things already set up. It was quite easy to just go, great, H90, it's being assigned MIDI channel 1. You have to make sure that inside H90 you have that corresponding MIDI channel, because that's the lane that it's going to send information to. I want the Mastermind to send out preset change messages. So in MIDI they're called program change. So by clicking this, I'm saying send this message, send a message to change to preset 4, the Echo System to preset 1, and the Astro to preset 0. You jump to this other page, and these are where I have my loops assigned. Loop 1 is the H90. So if I send that preset program change, but the loop isn't on, the sound will change, but the H90 won't be in line with my signal. So here, it's in line with the signal. If I went to loop 2, that is the EP booster, and if I went to loop 5, that is the Keeley version of the Rat pedal. So as I create this, I turn on the H90, send it to that. The Echo System is always in my effects loop, because it's also controlling some volume stuff for me too. And the Astro obviously is always in the line, because that's the amp we're using. And as I go to the next sound, it's just a raw distortion sound. I didn't want to send any message to the H90. In fact, I took the H90 out of line, but I did add in the EP booster and changed the channel on the Astro. Super simple to get around on this and make your presets. And if you want to switch the order of where they fall on your pedal board, the Mastermind pedal board, you could just drag and drop, you could copy. Everything is very clever and logically organized. Now, a quick aside, there's no tuner on my board because the RJM is a tuner. Another is silly, but it's another reason I was like, this is great. RJM takes a lot of space in the context of a pedal board, but a tuner takes up a third of that. So if you cut that down to another third, it's getting pretty tidy. So yeah, I mean, that was good on them for including that. That's fantastic. The signal chain from the guitar goes into the Friedman buffer bay. I have the buffer turned on. I trust that Dave knows how to make an A+ buffer. So that's the buffer I'm using. From there, I'm hitting the ISP Decimator X. Because this guitar has a true single coil in the back, I need to be able to cut off some of that noise from time to time. So with the gate, I can do... Oh yeah. Toit. That might be too tight for some other things. A little grabby there, so I found a nice happy medium. And sometimes I just forget it's on. It's really transparent and nice. So this is before everything goes in. The reason I put it up front is because I don't want to step on a boost or overdrive that's going to change that threshold structure. The level from the guitar is generally consistent, so I could choose the threshold that's going to cut off the noise of the decimate, and it'll always be right about there. If it's after overdrive pedals and stuff, man, you have to get really finicky with it, and it's just going to be all over the map. So it's a nice little clean fixer, and it's easy for me to turn on and off. It has nothing to do with programs. From there, I'm hitting a Friedman Buxom Boost. It's a pedal I love. It doesn't look exactly like a Buxom Boost because I took off the faceplate. It had gotten quite dirty. And then I just kind of liked the look of the industrial, we'll say, and then I just wrote with silver Sharpie on there. So that's a Friedman Buxom Boost. Nothing modified about it other than the faceplate. What this does that's super great is you'll see this middle knob on the bottom is a tight knob, and it cuts off the low end really naturally so that if you have a big woofy bottom, it will just clean all that up, and you can just tighten it up until you're happy there. I left that outside of the patch switching because it also has a 3-band EQ at the top. So if I was feeling too bright or too dark or too woofy or maybe just not enough level or something, I could just quickly switch that without having to disrupt anything on the amp or change anything else. I'll show you the difference here. This is the neck pickup. All right, it's pretty big and woofy. There's all this sort of thunderous lows that are existing, and you can just tighten that up. And you could go further. Let's go further. Yeah. It's great that on a neck pickup you could really tighten things up and use it in a rhythm capacity without just overloading the bottom end. I'm sending MIDI from the Mastermind. That's going to the Eventide H90. Now taking the through or out of the H90, so it's daisy chaining. In order to get this working right though, I did need to use a separate breakout box to convert to the 1/4 inch. That box has also a splitter through, so that's going out back to the Friedman buffer bay under the board. And so I could easily just plug to the side of the buffer bay. That's going to control the channel switching of the amp. In another loop, I have that EP booster. It's just a general fattenerizer that I like, especially if I have like a clean sound and you just want a little more ooh. And it makes things a little more squishy sometimes. I didn't have it on too many sounds, but I loved it on this. Of course, that's also having that tremolo from the H90, so I can turn that off. I'm just going to do it from the H90. If I turn off the EP booster, it sounds like this. There I'm using the blue channel almost like clean and getting the little extra dirt out of it from the EP booster. I find it to be a really flattering pedal. I'm happy to have that on any board. And it's the 90s, so I wanted to throw in a rat just for some of that extra rat, fuzzy, fizzy rat color. I tried a couple because I was never really like a rat person, but I get it now. It's cool. I was just gonna use a rat pedal, but it's really heavy. I have to take off the feet, and then if you take off the feet, then you also have to take off the battery compartment because it has this weird battery compartment sticking up, and I didn't want a loose open pedal. I don't know. That's a weird thing that they did. Of course, you know, I got to try some others because that's what we do. So I also got a TC Electronic Magus, smaller by a lot, you know, has 3 rat settings. I could get this sounding like 99.9% exactly the same as this, plus more. And I was really impressed with that, and I thought that sounded really good and super cheap. I think in like 50 or 60 bucks. Especially here, it sounded really great. Now, we had a rehearsal with just me and another guitar player. It sounded really good. Once the second, or I guess in that case the third guitar player came in there, that Magus just felt like I couldn't get enough presence out of it. And then if you roll the filter all the way up, then it's just bright, but I just couldn't get it to come out of the speaker, which is what I liked about it here, because it's a little more scooped, I guess, maybe. So at that point, I swapped it out for the Keeley Super Rodent. The Super Rodent is one of the dual pedals, so it's a Rat and a Boss SD1 essentially put in there, and it's his mods on those, and you could take either of those tone stacks or either of sort of the gain structures, the distortion clipping, and choose what you want. So I just have it in the full Rat mode, although it's pretty cool with the DS1 tone knob. And while the Keeley didn't have quite as robust of a bottom end as the TC Electronic did, it spoke, and it actually just kind of came out of the speaker a little nicer. And when I say nicer, it's a Rat, so I don't mean nicer, but it effortlessly, it just threw itself out of the speaker. So I ran that over the clean channel in the Astro 20, and you know, it just kind of like rages. That's my clean channel. Rat. I think I only used that in 2 places. I used it for that wall of wah wah wah. Also, which it does really well, and for that moment, and then once the rest of the song kicked in, I went back to the purple channel on the Astro 20 without the Rat. Let me show you a couple more tones on the Super Rodent. I gotta get down to turn some knobs, so we'll go to camera 2. Now the H90 doesn't have analog dry-through, so when you run your guitar signal through it, it gets digitized and then sent out the other side. Even if you were just going to add, say, just a hint of reverb, the whole signal gets digitized. And I think I could hear that. So I don't love that aspect of it, but what I'm using it for is pretty transformative sound, so in that case I don't care. If I want that original sound, I'll do something really subtle with one of the other effects. But I want it to completely morph, and that the H90 does very well. So when I need to use it, the H90 gets patched in line from the RJM, and the effect will be in place. Let me show you a couple of examples of that. So I could start the song, and then with one tap, I could go over to my organ sound. The H90 has 2 effects at a time. Some of their algorithms have multi-effects in them. It's a really powerful unit. You could hear a bit of reverb coming in through here. That is part of the H90 effect. So really useful stuff. Like on this other sound, if I was going for the whammy, it was so piercing, but I could use a second algorithm to roll off the high end and sort of add some mids. I had tried a couple other units. HX1 has a whammy in there. I thought the H90's pitch sounded a little fatter and more naturally whammy. So that was a big choice in going with this, is that I knew I needed the whammy and I knew I needed a wah as well. I thought it'd be weird hitting activate and then jumping over to the wah, but it actually was not bad at all. It's not a bad wah for a digital wah. In fact, compared to some of the other options I had, I was able to dial in something that I was very comfortable with. I brought up my Zakk Wylde wah as a reference and just kept going back and forth until I was like, yeah, it's pretty nice. This is the H90 control software. I just learned there's an iPad controller, so I probably should have done that, but I have a USB cable connected to the H90. Critical. Trying to work off of the front panel is confusing and convoluted. I'm sure someone can do it. I'd been trying for years. I watched hours of online videos and still came out of it like, why do they make it so complicated? Sounds great, but it's very complicated. So when I'm making my patches here, I just made presets so that with the Mastermind, I could just change the preset. 2 engines, A and B. This is a good example. This is the more spacey, like Mazzy Star kind of thing. Wanted an echo and a little spring reverb here. So I could go to the preset library, select A, and if I want like a delay, what kind of delay you want. And then you select the preset name, which goes and is put into that slot. At that point, you can edit it. And if you right click, actually, if you select that thing, I could choose the expression pedal to control the filter. Or, like in the spring reverb, I could control the, I had the expression pedal of the mix. So the more toe down I did of the expression pedal, the louder the spring reverb mix would come in. And you could assign so all the way toe down, maybe it's just a tiny bit, or it's a lot, or it never gets that small. So that's really elegant and quick to move. This is the whammy setting, and the pedal is controlling the manual shift, which jumps between unison and the 2-octave bump there. And this is cool. There's a low pass filter, which cuts off the highs, because if you jump up 2 octaves, it can be really bright and nasty. And I was also adjusting some EQ over here, cutting out some treble. Yeah, so that's pretty straightforward. Then I just save the patch, and over in the RJM editor, and which preset I want it to go to. So all of these effects so far have been running into the front of the amp. I go into the buffer bay, all of these effects get routed and they come back to the buffer bay. I just send that to the front of the amp. It's a very simple setup because it's all on the side and nice and clean. But the Astro 20 does have an effects loop, and I wanted to have a separate effect over there in the effects loop. That's what the Empress Echo system is doing for me. But then I took the Eventide H90 and put that delay in the front, set it up with the expression pedal. As you saw, the expression pedal is going direct to the H90. So it could be the whammy pedal, wah pedal, volume delay, whatever. So as I fade it in, I'll get more delay. Here's the Empress alone. And then here's both stacked. Here's a setting that I'm using some EQ and compression in the front of the amp on the H90, a little chorus. And now the Echo system is also doing a modulated, like Deluxe Memory Man sort of delay. It's nice, just helps get things swirling, you know? Nobody likes a dry guitar sound. Unclean guitar. The Empress has a great sounding slapback too. I know you could route your expression pedal through the Mastermind and you could decide which of these units it's going to send to. I just didn't. I didn't want to get that complicated. It's already complicated. I just wanted to stick with the expression pedal goes to the H90 and the Echo system is handling these external, more cleaner, some modulation delays. But you see in the top right corner, there's an output knob, and that is critically important because in 3-guitar band, if you want a solo, you have to get your volume up. So because that's in the effects loop, this is actually the volume that you're at. So I made presets for when I needed to solo that has the same effects, it's just that output knob is turned up. So we've got like... The added gain was because I also dropped the EP booster onto that channel, but that wasn't going to give me any more volume. It was just going to give me more gain at this low volume that no one could hear you. And by the time you finish 80% of your solo, the sound guy figures out, oh, it was that guy that's soloing, and turns you up like you just missed everything. So any of the patches that were soloed, I cranked up the gain. I set it to maybe like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Maybe could have went louder if I was feeling frisky. But that is one of the things that was important to me with the Echo system. So that's my rig for this gig. Yeah, it was super fun. The band are so nice. We had a blast, and it went over really well. So we had a really fun time. That was great. So thanks for watching this very long video. No one sponsored this video. This is just me showing you what I had. You know, I could have picked anything, and this really worked, and I had a blast. So that was the main thing, is like, I need something that works, and I wanted to have a lot of fun with it. So I did, and I built like a kick-ass pedal board. So that's super rad. And now I'm gonna tear it apart and put it on my big Friedman board with the RJM. So I have all these loops, and then I have more MIDI controlled devices. It's gonna be bonkers sick. So yeah, because I don't think I'll be playing again live for a minute, and if I do, I'll just have to break that down and throw this other one together. I didn't mention the cabling. When I was setting it up, I used solderless because it was easy to like get measurements and stuff, but as it came together, I replaced all the solderless stuff just because I started getting worried. Like, what if one cable goes bad? And it worked out nicely. I used those cable ties, tied everything down. It's pretty tidy. I'm not as anti of the solderless cables as some people are, but because I've had soldered cables die too. It's cables. You know, we're in the guitar world of cables go bad, strings break, tubes red plate, speakers burst, beer gets spilled on things and it explodes. We're living on the edge here, right? It's rock and roll. Rock and roll with a million lights and MIDI and 7 channels and stuff. Anyway, that's my version of rock and roll, and that's how I like it. So that's how I did it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later.